Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. That is Threat Intelligence, the Intellect of Enterprise Security. So this is the fourth of a series of bite-sized enterprise security webinars that we've been conducting here at Somerford Associates. Okay, and so the plan for this webinar, it's as shown on this slide. So first we'll take a look at some of the CIS controls that threat intelligence within Splunk Enterprise Security will meet and talk briefly about some of those. We'll then take a look at the threat intelligence framework itself and unpick how it works. And before then, taking a look at the framework in practice as well. And I'll do this by taking you through a demo of some of the threat intelligence aspects of enterprise security. Just a quick tour of that. And finally, we'll briefly discuss threat intelligence management and how it can reduce your mean time to investigate by filtering out threat intelligence that is not pertinent to your investigation, for one thing. Okay, so the CIS control. So when we talk about threat intelligence, we're talking about gathering, analysing, and using information about potential cyber threats to proactively defend against them. And in so doing, we're empowering our organisations to stay ahead of adversaries by providing actionable insights into emerging threats, vulnerabilities, and attack techniques. So with this in mind, I don't think it's too difficult to see why it's important. So one of the two CIS controls which specifically discuss threat intelligence is number 7 here, control 7, continuous vulnerability management. And that's all about continuously assessing and tracking vulnerabilities on your enterprise assets. And to do this effectively, we need access to timely threat information, and in order to be aware of the vulnerabilities and effectively address them. And the next one we'll talk about as control 17, incident response management. And this directs that mature organizations should include threat intelligence and threat hunting into their incident response process to help focus detections and define response procedures to identify and remediate more quickly. So there's two controls there, which are sort of threat intelligence is pertinent to. So if we take a look at the Splunk Enterprise Security Threat Intelligence Framework itself, and take a look at how does it actually work. So we start at the retrieval stage, we can see on the bottom left there, and this is where we're managing our threat intelligence sources via the threat intelligence modular input. So there are a number of sources that we can configure out of the box, but also there are a number of add-ons as well, which you can get from Splunk base, and they'll also provide additional forms of threat intelligence into the platform. Should you have, for example, a premium threat intelligence feed or one that isn't already there, we can download that additional functionality and get that installed. So once we've retrieved our threat intel, we're then going to proceed to the normalization step. And here we find threat workload, and that's going to normalize any raw data into the required standard before passing it to the KV store for storage. So that's the Splunk's KV store. We then have lookup generating searches. Now these they will duplicate data within the KV store actually, and they output that data as various lookup tables, such as a lookup table for file hashes, for example, or IP intelligence, that kind of thing. So what we've got now, we've got a range of threat intelligence at this stage, which has been normalized and stored in appropriate lookup tables, ready to be searched. And this brings us to the next stage of this particular process, and that is threat detection. So at this stage, threat generating searches will correlate data in Splunk indexes against data held within the threat intelligence lookups. Okay, so they're looking for matches at this point. And if any correlations are made, matches, then information that's generated, that is then stored in the threat activity index. And this data is then further persisted actually. So as you can see on the chart here, during the persistent stage, and it's entered in, it's accelerated as a data model. So it's stored within a threat data model, and then that information is then accelerated. So this data is then used in analysis by an analyst through dashboards and alerts. They're the main sort of methods of accessing it, dashboards and alerts. And within enterprise security, for example, we've got the threat activity and threat artifacts dashboards, which I'll briefly show you, as well as the threat activity detected correlation search. And so what that does, it generates a notable event, which we've talked about in a previous webinar, actually. And it applies risk to a risk object once it's triggered, as well as generating a notable event, as I say. Okay, cool. And then, so to complete the cycle, we can then use the threat intelligence response action. So that's, upon the triggering of an alert, we can add indicators of compromise from that alert, such as, IP addresses, etc. We can add that directly from our results to the KV store, or the aforementioned KV store, and which will be then through searches placed into lookups, which we discussed, and then the cycle continues. And that is the complete cycle. Hopefully you can, from this, you can already see how your security posture can be improved with this framework. Okay, so anyway, the next thing here is to take a look at and do a bit of a tour of this framework in practice. So I'll just cut to enterprise security now. So here we go. This is possibly a familiar screen to most people. So one of the first things we want to look at really is the point of ingest. If we follow the chart, I'll loosely sort of follow it around and talk about it. So generally, the point of ingest is going to be configured from the configure, data enrichment, and threat intelligence management section. It's a demo environment, so please dismiss the warning, of course. Great, but yeah, okay. So here we can see quite a list of possible out-of-the-box threat intelligence sources. Some of them will be familiar, I'm sure. So top 1 million sites, hash values from GitHub. Yeah, I mean, obviously some of these are sort of demo as well, so they might not come out of the box for you, but they're pretty typical emerging threats. So here we're looking at lists of IP addresses. Somewhere in here is like CIDR ranges as well. So these are all ones that are out of the box. We can click them, get them enabled, and then they'll go through that process. So the modular input will download them, stick them in the KV store. Searchers will then extract them and put them into lookups. Then those lookups will be used with the threat generating searches and populate dashboards, and the threat activity detected correlation search will trigger off it. So that's what's happening here. But these are the points of which, and you can see the URLs. So a lot of these are going to be, sort of API type calls, and it will retrieve the information that way. They're out of the box ones. If there isn't anything listed here and you need something new, you can click new, and we've got at least 5 methods here. So line orientated, sticks, taxi, local, or we can upload. Local's so obviously these are going to be taken from URLs. The local one, that'll be a lookup you've already got generated. So that is one way of achieving this with data you already have. You can ingest data, output the indicators of compromise as a lookup table, and then we can look locally at that lookup table for our threat intelligence. Or of course you can just upload. You just upload as a CSV. So if we just take a look at one, for example, we give it a name, description, type, the URL for which the information is retrieved, and then some of the arguments here in our post call, which we'll be making. Yeah, that's generally how the retrieval's made. I mean, really in sort of high level stuff there. But what isn't mentioned here, which we've talked about briefly, is some of the stuff on Splunk base. So if you do have a particular service, chances are, if it's a well-known one, or even if it's not, you might find an add-on is already there, which will contain the Python scripts in the background, which will retrieve that intelligence and present it normalized to Splunk, ready for correlation. So that's our point of ingest. So let's just take a look at, it comes in, modular input, enters to the KV store. We can take a quick look, perhaps at our some of the lookups that are generated, just so we can see how the process looks. So we've got our lookup table files. They're actually going to be stored within the threat intelligence add-on, which is, this is one of them. A lot of these, when you see DA and SA, these will be all part of the enterprise security package. So enterprise security itself is built up of several sort of child apps, I suppose. And so if you look in here, we can see all the lookups that are available. So these are some of the ones that are generated. So local email intel, threat intel by this, threat intel by that. Threat intel by CIDR, we can take a look at that, perhaps. So we go up, just open a search, just to see what it looks like. Input lookup. Yeah, here we go. We've got some CIDR ranges here. So essentially, if something picked up, if this is switched on and an IP address is picked up belonging to one of these ranges, that's a threat. That's threat activity that'll be picked up on. I mean, there are so many different ones here that we could see. Some of them are huge, as you can probably imagine. It's like file intel, the file hashes type stuff. There's many thousands. I think last time I checked, you're looking at 350 odd thousand there. So it will take a while to load. But I mean, also here, there's a lot of stuff that isn't going to be pertinent to all environments. So that's something to bear in mind. And we'll talk about that really briefly later on, keeping things bite-sized. Yeah, so okay, so these are some of the lookup table files that are generated with the data that is presented within the threat intelligence framework in the KV store. So what we'll look at next then, how does this actually look? How are we going to analyze this stuff? So the way we do that, one method to do it, we've got dashboards within Splunk Enterprise Security. So we go to our security intelligence, threat intelligence, and let's take a look at threat activity. And this dashboard is going to give us a sort of a summary over the last 24 hours by default of the kind of threat activity we're seeing in this environment. Of course, bear in mind, it is a demo environment. So I'm sure it's not really that tragic a state. But yeah, but you can see over the 24 hours we had 94 threat matches, 97 threat activity, and one collection. I mean, it's kind of a summary of everything. We've got a time chart here, so we can see we're actually getting a lot of hits from our IP intelligence, certainly more than we would want to see throughout the day or the lifetime of this demo environment anyway. And a few other bits and pieces. I think the most interesting part here is likely to be here. So what we can see, we've got a match, threat match, so 1.19.11.11, coming from our emerging threats IP block list, intelligence source. The collection is IP intelligence. And what we're seeing is we've got these source IP addresses are hitting this destination. Looks like we've got, I'm pretty sure they're private. Don't test me on it, but 10 dot. So something's reaching out to this public IP address, so we can assume this is coming from our estate, and that's a worry. And that's a worry, of course. And there's other stuff as well. So we've got some proxy data here. What IP address are we matching on? 108.115. So we can see that's reaching out to our services as a destination there. So there's a lot of information here. We can see all the matches. Obviously, we probably wouldn't want to see this. No, actually, it might be quite informative if we've got a public-facing service, and these are the kind of things we might see. I guess this is what we're seeing. If we want to have a look at the events themselves, we can click on this. It will take us to the raw search, and we can actually see the threat. So yeah, we can see that this is the data model we were talking about earlier. So the threat intelligence gets accelerated in this data model. Click on it and we can see it. But importantly, we can see the source type, so we know where it's coming from. We can investigate. We've got the IP addresses and the source, so we can see more information in this screen. We can run searches against it. So that's all great. Threat intelligence as well. We've got threat artifacts. This dashboard's more about the kind of indicators of compromise we're pulling in. So it's a bit of a summary there. So we can search for it here. If there's anything we're particularly interested in, we can find details of it here. So the other aspect of this then, from some of the analytical point of view, if we go to configure, content management, it is the correlation search. So it's called threat activity detected. Type correlation search. Here we go, you can see it here, threat activity detected. So we'll click on that. And this is search, quite chunky. But essentially what it's doing is it's any of the threat intelligence within the threat intelligence data model. Is anything in there also present in any of the sort of indexed data that's coming in? So is anything, if we've got an IP address in our threat intelligence data model, is anything in any of our normalized SIM compliant data sources, such as source IP or dest IP, is any of that matching? If that is matching, that's please trigger this alert, and that's what's happening here. And when it triggers, it's going to generate a notable event, and we're also applying a bit of risk as well. But as I alluded to, there is another action as well. You can apply threat as well. So add threat intelligence. You can generate it from the results of this search if you want to do that. Obviously, that's not going to be the case all the time, but certainly you're going to have some correlation searches which might generate some kind of threat object, and you can add that to the overall sort of threat intelligence knowledge estate as an adaptive response action, which is useful. Okay, so we looked at that. Let's have a quick look at the notable event itself that's generated then. So if we go to our incident review, and this has been described in a previous video, but if we take a look at our threat, excuse me, that does work, but it would be better to actually pick the threat activity detected one from our correlation. So search type, correlation search, threat activity detected. And here we can see it here. This is what it looks like when it actually triggers. So if we take a look at this top one, we've got all the information about this notable event as per previous videos. Okay, so we can use this to, we can start an investigation if we want. We can add it to it. We can add it to an existing investigation. We can click, contribute an event, view all threat activity involving this source. If we click on that, it opens another search, and it'll return all the other events that have in some way linked to that source IP address there. We might expect to see adaptive response actions here as well, perhaps, add it to the KV store, that might appear here. And generally additional bits of information, MITRE attack, any other bits and pieces that'll be useful for us. And obviously we can click these down arrows and act on them accordingly should we wish. So that's how it would appear. And that's how you'd investigate it, certainly. Okay, great. So we'll chop over it. Yeah, really whistle-stop tour of the threat framework there. But at a high level, that certainly does cover everything. But you can dive into this much deeper, as you can probably imagine. It is a hugely powerful framework, really useful. So I just want to talk quite briefly on Splunk Threat Intelligence Management as well before signing off on this one. But so Threat Intelligence Management, it is a feature of Splunk Enterprise Security and Splunk Mission Control as well, and it's designed to help analysts investigate security events by providing relevant and normalized intelligence actually to better understand threat context and the main thing being accelerate time to triage and to resolution, of course. So analysts using this sort of this package, this tool, you can manage security events and leverage threat intelligence feeds directly within the interface of the choice, really. So if you've got Splunk Enterprise Security, you can use that, or Splunk Mission Control, either of those workspaces. And obviously without having to pivot to other tools, which has its own benefits, doesn't it? Reducing time to investigate, that kind of thing. And really what's this ensuring is it's ensuring informed, timely, and actionable intelligence across the SOX ecosystem of teams, tools, and partners. Okay, so as well as that, we're reducing the number of alerts to investigate by filtering out intelligence that perhaps isn't relevant to the organization. And that's key. And that's allowing analysts to monitor for intelligence related to specific use cases. If you don't need file hashes, just pick on that, for example. Why are we ingesting them? So Threat Intelligence Management allows you to control that. And essentially what you're doing is you're curating appropriate intelligence into a single normalized view in order to make it easier for analysts to understand threat context and take action. So, by normalizing, I'm talking about if one platform classifies threat as, critical, high, medium, and another one gives it a score, well, we can normalize those scores using this tool. Okay, And if you've got maybe 4 or 5 different threat intelligence feeds, normalizing is one thing, but perhaps you want the IPs from one, you want URLs from the other, crude example, but you can do that using this tool. Okay, so that actually brings us to the end of this bite-sized webinar. Thanks again to everyone for attending. I hope it was informative and useful. And crucially, if you'd like to know more about enterprise security and how you can leverage your threat intelligence using it, then please do contact us at info@somerfordassociates.com. Thanks again.